Chapter 1. The Waking of the Moonstone. The summer storms of Eldemar always began the same way, a single roll of thunder that seemed to pass beneath the earth rather than above it, rattling cellars and waking dogs in the valleys. On the first night of high sun, that rumble reached even the marble-walled observatory of Caer Lith, where the astronomer princess Arian Siriel kept her lonely watch. Arian's eyes were sharp from years spent tracing star paths, yet she almost missed the change. The moonstone, a fist-sized crystal housed in an iron cradle at the tower's peak, had glowed a steady milk blue since her great-grandfather's reign. Tonight, a bruise-coloured pulse throbbed at its heart. It flared once, twice, then settled into a deeper hue, a purple so dark it seemed to drink the torchlight. She drew a quick breath. The stone's colour was legend, blue in peace, violet in warning, black in doom. That scale had been taught to every child of Eldemar, though no one alive had ever seen it shift. A violet warning meant the border magic, the ancient skein that ringed the kingdom like an unseen wall, had been pierced. Arian pulled her riding cloak over her white scholar's coat and hurried down the spiral steps. Her boots slapped stone, echoing through silent corridors. At the castle's western gate she found Captain Brannoch, helm under his arm, just as the alarm bell clanged twice, slow, uncertain strokes that told of confusion more than panic. "Captain," she said, voice calm despite the thrum in her chest, "I require an escort to the Thornwatch. The moonstone has changed." Brannoch studied her face. Whatever doubt he held fled at her steady eyes. 5 riders, he snapped to the guard beside him, and the man sprinted for the stables. Within minutes, Arian and her escort clattered out of Caer Lith. Summer grasses bowed under the first breath of the coming storm. The road curled toward the Thornwood, a dark girdle of pines that marked Eldemar's northern verge. At its heart lay the Watch, a weather-beaten fort whose purpose was older than its rotting timbers, to keep vigil over the only pass through the Frostspine Mountains, the route any invader must take. But no army threatened Eldemar. Her neighbours were distant and wary of the border magic. For a century the Thornwatch had stood as ceremonial duty, until now. They reached the fort at dawn's grey edge. A hush lay over the rampart, broken by nervous whispers. Brannoch swung from his saddle and strode for the gatehouse, while Arian dismounted more slowly, feeling eyes upon her. Word of the moonstone travelled faster than hoofbeats. Inside the courtyard the garrison assembled, a ragged line of 60 men and women blinking at the early hour. Their commander, Lieutenant Varek, saluted briskly. Sweat darkened his collar though the air was cool. "Report," said Arian. Varek's jaw worked. "Nothing seen, Your Highness. No riders, no fires in the pass. But the border wards," he gestured to the shrine set against the inner wall. There, twin stone wolves flanked a simple basin filled with river water. Every dawn shift, the guards looked for ripples, any sign of breach. The basin was empty. The wolves cracked down the snout. Arian felt the courtyard tilt around her. The wards were gone. Invisible they might have been, but without them, Eldemar was only a small kingdom with 2 wide borders and too few blades. She placed a steadying hand on the shrine's broken fang, as if it might answer. Her father, King Maelor, would call the council at once, but councils took time and parchment and argument. Arian's mind moved faster, leaping to the only place where the secret of the ward's making might be learned. The Library of Roots, buried beneath the city of Evershade, across the Frostspine. Legends claimed its shelves held the pact forged between Eldemar's first queen and the forest spirits. "Lieutenant," she said, turning back, "ready your swiftest rider, a message for the king. The border has fallen, and I ride this hour for Evershade to seek its mending." Varek blanched. "Have the rider swear it in his own blood if he must." Brannoch stepped forward. "You cannot ride alone, princess." "I will not. You will ride with me." He breathed out a single laugh. "The Thornwatch is already thin. So are our chances if we dither." She swung into her saddle again. 2 companions, no more. Speed is our armour. The storm at our backs will hide us." Brannoch hesitated, then barked 3 names. The chosen riders scrambled to pack rations. Arian gazed northward. Dawn had fully broken, but along the horizon the clouds churned an ugly purple, echoing the moonstone's pulse. Behind her, a soldier murmured a prayer to the threefold flame. Arian whispered none. She had read the stars too long to believe in distant gods. Yet as their small company galloped from the Thornwatch into the shadowed foothills, she found herself mouthing something like a plea, not to gods or spirits, but to the silent moon that had always watched Eldemar. Hold, she thought, just a little longer. Chapter 2. The Briar-Crowned Prince. To reach Evershade, one must first survive the Frostspine Pass and then cross the Old Wild, a forest so ancient that maps gave up at its edge, drawing instead a stylized tree labeled, "Here wander the Arrels." Few scholars agreed on what the Arrels were, spirits, demons, or merely a folk tale, but all agreed that travelers who left the road after dusk were rarely seen again. Arian's party rode hard, changing horses at a hunter's lodge marked on Brannock's memory rather than any chart. Rain caught them in the high saddle of the pass, stinging their faces and plastering cloaks to mail. Summer storm though it was, the air sharpened to near-winter chill. When they descended into the Old Wild's eaves, fog coiled through the trunks like pale rope, and the world smelled of pine pitch and secrets. On the noon of the third day they reached the Rune Gate, two half-fallen pillars capped by green-black copper plates, the last handiwork of a kingdom that had ruled here before Eldemar's founding. Within that arch the road turned to paved blocks the colour of old bone, each etched with tangled sigils now almost worn flat. "Stay on the stones," Brannock warned the others. "Step off, you invite the forest to supper." Arian searched his face for jest, found none. Even she, child of observatories, felt the forest's hush press close. Branches above were so thick they formed a ceiling. The light fell in soft silver shafts. Birdsong was sparse, but now and then a single note rang, bright and uncanny as glass struck by wind. They made camp that night in the ruins of a watch platform. Moss cloaked every beam, but the stones beneath still shed water. Brannock set the guard order. Arian took second watch. Near midnight she sat upon a damp lintel, cloak wrapped tight, listening to the embers hiss. The moon showed through gaps in the canopy, almost full and ghost-white. A crunch of leaf made her spin, hand on the dagger at her belt. From the dark stepped a young man in a cloak of woven briar. His hair was black-green, like leaves at dusk, and eyes shone the colour of river moss. He carried no visible weapon. "I mean no harm," he said, raising empty palms. His voice held the accent of no country Arian knew, fluid, each syllable blooming and fading like a drop in water. Her companions slept cousin to death. She chided herself for letting them. "You are Arrel," she guessed. The tales spoke of forest lords shaped like men but older than stonework. The stranger tilted his head. "In your tongue, perhaps. I am Callum, of the Thorn Crown." Arian lowered her blade but did not sheathe it. "Why approach in secret?" "To see whether the world beyond the bow still carried courage." He looked past her to the slumbering soldiers. "I see it does. What do the Arrels know of courage?" His smile was small. "We remember when you—" The green light sank into her as if she were a window. The scent was of new rain on old dust. Stacks of scrolls spiraled up living trunks, shelves curved with the bark. At a stone desk sat a woman in robes the colour of forest loam, face lined like weathered birch. "I am Archivist Myra," the woman said. "Daughter of man, why come?" Arian knelt, setting her dagger before her. Steel gave way to oak the instant it touched the floor. "The border magic that once bound Eldemar has failed. I seek the original covenant to mend it." Myra's gaze was neither kind nor cruel. "To mend a thing is to admit one's hand broke it. Will you bear that weight?" "Yes." "Will Eldemar?" "Let me bear it first, then I will teach them." The archivist rose, vines unfolded from the ceiling, lowering a parchment sealed in wax. On its cover, a sigil, a 6-petaled flower set inside a ring of 12 runes. "The covenant is bound by life thread," Myra said. "Equal exchange, one bloodline pledge for the land's renewal. Will you seal anew?" Arian's pulse hammered. What is asked? A cut that will not heal. As the archivist spoke, the vines produced a thorn as long as a quill, its tip silver with sap. Your hand, to mark you as keeper until death. Scarred hands she could bear. Arian placed her right palm on the surface. Myra drove the thorn through. That pain was sharp but brief, yet when she withdrew it, the wound remained open, a thin crimson line that glimmered like garnet. Arian felt warmth flood up her arm, then out into the room, as though her vein had joined the library's roots. The archivist pressed the covenant into her uninjured hand. Read, keeper. Remember, the border is a bargain. Your people dwell in safety so long as they do not cut beyond the outer stone ring. Break the ring, break the ward. Arian bowed. We will set new ring stones. If you do not, Myra said, turning away, the thorn will widen. Arian understood. The wound was tether. Should Eldemar fail again, her life would pay first. Outside the arch, Brannock and the others leapt to their feet as she emerged. Callum watched with unreadable eyes. She held up the parchment. We have it. Now we must race the shadow that already rides. Thunder rumbled distant, though the sky above the glade was clear. Callum inhaled, tasting the wind. It is nearer than you think, keeper. Arian flexed her wounded hand. No pain now, but a steady heartbeat pulse. Then guide us home. Arian's heart lurched. Promises broken, you mean? The wards are fallen, Eldemar is bare. We know. Callum sank to a crouch near the fire, careful not to stir its smoke. The border's undoing began when its keepers forgot their edges were shared. Your king hunts timber for ships, your nobles quarry the Vale Mount for marble. Each cut was a thread in the skein. Now the skein lies in tatters. Arian thought of lumber writs signed by her father, roads pushed farther each year into old forests. We grew. We needed room. The forest grows, yet it does not tear down the sky to do so. He brushed ash from a stone. Still, blame is dull talk. I came because the breach harms us as well. Something rides the empty way, shadow with many tongues. It will feast on your towns, then on our roots. Then help me reach the Library of Roots. There lies the pact, the spell's original shape. With it, perhaps we mend what's frayed. Callum's brows rose. You know the library's cost? No, she admitted. Blood from the line that broke first faith. Royal blood. His gaze flicked to her collar where, despite travel grime, the thread silver of her rank gleamed. Yours. Arian swallowed. A life. A measure, he said, as though that clarified everything. She stood. Then guide us, thorn-crowned, and I will pay what measure is due. Eldemar falls if I turn aside. Callum rose likewise. So you choose. I will lead you by duskways, if your friends keep to courage. He touched 2 fingers to the briar circlet atop his hair, a gesture halfway between salute and blessing, then stepped back into shadow. Leaves closed around him like water. Brannock stirred at dawn to find Arian seated by cooling coals, eyes alight with some resolve he read as danger. She told him of Callum in few words. He heard her oath, swore his own to guard it, but worry etched lines from his nostrils to his jaw. They broke camp before the sun reached the uppermost branches. Where Callum passed unseen ahead, the forest seemed to lean away, offering passages that were not on any map. Once Arian glimpsed a stag with antlers tangled in flowering vines, pace alongside them for a mile, silent as guilt. At dusk on the 5th day, they reached a glade lit from below, as though the grass itself glowed. In its centre rose a door of living trees braided into an arch, bark grown in whorls that formed words. Arian felt more than saw. What roots forget, leaf remembers. Callum appeared beside her. Here stands the library. Beyond this arch you will find the archive warden. Speak your need, offer your measure. If accepted, the pact will open. Brannock touched Arian's sleeve. Highness. I know, she smiled, thin as winter sun. Wait here. If I do not return by dawn, ride south. Warn the king to flee. She stepped through. Chapter 3. The Broken Circle. The return from the Library of Roots was not swift. The Old Wild, though willing to open for those who bore its pact, still demanded caution. Callum of the Thorn Crown led them along twilight paths barely wide enough for horses, winding through glens where time seemed to sleep and moss-covered stones whispered warnings in forgotten tongues. Arian bore the wound on her palm like a badge of fire. Though it did not bleed, the cut remained fresh, pulsing with her heartbeat. At night, she could feel the forest listening to her dreams. When she finally asked Callum about it, he only said, "The pact is not only binding, it is watching." By the seventh day, they reached the southern edge of the forest and looked out upon the foothills of Eldemar. But something was wrong. A dark smudge hovered over the horizon. Smoke. They galloped for Caer Lith. They found the west quarter of the city scorched, houses lay in ruins, their beams like bones. Survivors moved like ghosts, dazed and blackened. Brannock swung from his horse and ran toward the inner gate, but the palace guard met them halfway. The soldier's face was grey. "The king is dead." Arian reeled. "How?" "3 nights passed," the soldier said, voice brittle. "A shadow beast breached the wall. Nothing stopped it. The king stood with the guard. He did not fall back." A storm rolled across Arian's thoughts. Her father, foolish and proud, had died defending stone, while the true defense, the border magic, lay broken. Now she was heir not just to a crown, but to failure. In the castle's great hall, the council had already gathered. Lords and clerics murmured like anxious birds. When Arian entered, silence fell. She stepped to the high seat, her wounded hand visible. "The breach came not from war, but from forgetting," she said. "We mined where we were forbidden. We felled groves marked by the old stones. The forest warned us, and we laughed. Now the pact is reforged, but our debt is not erased. We must set the circle anew." One voice rang clear, Lord Asgren, grey-bearded and heavy in the shoulders. "You would have us bow to trees. I would have us live." Another voice rose, "And this border you would mend. How? With ink and oaths? The wards were spellwork far beyond us." Arian unrolled the parchment from the Library of Roots. As she did, a soft wind stirred though no window was open. The runes glowed faintly. "This is the binding covenant. It can restore the wards, but not alone. We must rebuild the circle. 12 stone rings, one for each old realm. Each must hold earth from its land and blood from its line. We must ask our neighbours for aid." Murmurs of dismay. "No kingdom will help without cost," Asgren said. "Then we bargain, or we die." Chapter 4. The Mirror of Cinders. Eldemar sent 3 riders that day, one east, one west, one south. Arian herself rode north to the ice realms of Rekindled, where the White Queen ruled from glacier halls. Brannock rode with her, as did Callum, who claimed to know the Frostways from an age before they bore roads. The way was perilous. Snow fell as they passed the Frostspine's second ridge. Wolves stalked them but kept their distance, eyes gleaming like coals. One morning, they found a circle of dead hares at the base of their campfire, untouched by scavengers. "Omen," Callum muttered. "The cinder mirror wakes." Arian pressed him. "What is the cinder mirror?" "A shadow trapped in ice, not dead, not bound, once sealed by the border magic. Now, perhaps it stirs." They reached Rekindled on the 12th day. The White Queen received them in a hall of frozen light. She was tall and pale as frostwind, with lips the colour of melted moonstone. Arian knelt and told the tale. When she offered her blood to the basin of pact, it hissed and froze into a crystal shard. The Queen took it without fear. "I will lend you our stone and our silver," she said, "but only if you help reseal the cinder mirror. It lies beneath this court." That night, torches lit the spiral down. Brannock, Callum and Arian followed the Queen's retinue into the depths. Ice thickened to walls of glass. Behind them flickered shapes, twisting, human-like but wrong. They came to the mirror. It was not glass but obsidian, wide as a gate and flat as judgment. Frost rimmed its edge. Beneath the surface, fire burned, not flame but memory. Arian saw her father fall again and again. Brannock muttered oaths. Callum hissed, "It feeds on what wounds us." The Queen approached and her voice echoed, "We must gift it one scar deeper than its hunger." Arian stepped forward. "Then it will have mine." She raised her wounded hand and pressed it to the glass. Pain, not burning, consumption, like being read, scraped open, poured into the void. Her knees buckled, but the mirror shuddered, then cracked, then froze. When she woke, she lay in the Queen's chamber. Brannock stood nearby, haggard. Callum watched the storm outside. "It is sealed," the Queen said, voice soft. "You have our oath. May Eldemar stand." Arian sat up slowly, her hand now marked with frost veins. "One circle complete," she whispered. 11 to go. And the storm outside howled like something that knew its time was short. Chapter 4. The Mirror of Cinders. Eldemar sent 3 riders that day, one east, one west, one south. Arian herself rode north to the ice realms of Rekindled, where the White Queen ruled from glacier halls. Brannock rode with her, as did Callum, who claimed to know the frostways from an age before they bore roads. The way was perilous. Snow fell as they passed the frost-spine's second ridge. Wolves stalked them but kept their distance, eyes gleaming like coals. One morning, they found a circle of dead hares at the base of their campfire, untouched by scavengers. "Omen," Callum muttered. "The cinder mirror wakes." Arian pressed him. "What is the cinder mirror?" "A shadow trapped in ice, not dead, not bound, once sealed by the border magic. Now, perhaps it stirs." They reached Rekindled on the 12th day. The White Queen received them in a hall of frozen light. She was tall and pale as frostwind, with lips the colour of melted moonstone. Arian knelt and told the tale. When she offered her blood to the basin of pact, it hissed and froze into a crystal shard. The Queen took it without fear. "I will lend you our stone and our silver," she said, "but only if you help reseal the cinder mirror. It lies beneath this court." That night, torches lit the spiral down. Brannock, Callum and Arian followed the Queen's retinue into the depths. Ice thickened to walls of glass. Behind them flickered shapes, twisting, human-like, but wrong. They came to the mirror. It was not glass but obsidian, wide as a gate and flat as judgment. Frost rimmed its edge. Beneath the surface, fire burned, not flame but memory. Arian saw her father fall again and again. Brannock muttered oaths. Callum hissed, "It feeds on what wounds us." The Queen approached and her voice echoed, "We must gift it one scar deeper than its hunger." Arian stepped forward. "Then it will have mine." She raised her wounded hand and pressed it to the glass. Pain, not burning. Consumption, like being read, scraped open, poured into the void. Her knees buckled. But the mirror shuddered, then cracked, then froze. When she woke, she lay in the Queen's chamber. Brannock stood nearby, haggard. Callum watched the storm outside. "It is sealed," the Queen said, voice soft. "You have our oath. May Eldemar stand." Arian sat up slowly, her hand now marked with frost veins. "One circle complete," she whispered. 11 to go. And the storm outside howled like something that knew its time was short. Chapter 5. The Stone That Sang from Rekindled. The party travelled east through the Cradle Expanse, a vast land of wind and stone. Their destination, the Singing Stones of Daruk, a place where the wind carved melodies from hollow rock and where the earth itself was said to hold memory. The Daruk tribes were proud and secretive, followers of the stone voice, an ancient faith older than the spoken word. They had never bound their land to Eldemar. Arian hoped they would see past borders now that the shadow threatened all. When they arrived, they were met with spears. Callum stepped forward, speaking not with words but with tone, rhythm, a chant. The warriors hesitated, one lowered his weapon. "You speak the windmark," said the chieftain. "Few remember it. Why come?" Arian held out the covenant, to restore the circle. The chieftain frowned. "The stones remember betrayal. Why should they sing for you?" She hesitated, then stepped forward and laid her frost-veined hand on the central monolith. A deep hum shivered the earth. The wind ceased. The stones sang. A low, aching tone rose, like mourning in cathedral halls. Then another joined it, a third. The ground beneath their feet pulsed with a steady, ancient rhythm. The chieftain knelt. "You bear the wound of truth. The stone voice hears you." That night, the third circle was laid. Chapter 6. The Fire Beneath the Ash. Their next journey led them underground, to the ash realms of Volcara, where fire priests dwelled in halls beneath the black crags. Once enemies of Eldemar, Volcara's warriors had long sought independence, but fire, Arian reasoned, feared nothing, not even the dark. They entered through the ash gate, escorted by silent sentinels, cloaked in soot-coloured steel. Volcara's Grand Pyremaster, a woman of gold-marked skin and ember-coloured eyes, studied Arian with measured interest. You walk with frost in your veins, forest pact on your hand and stone song in your step. What would fire give that has not already been taken? Arian knelt. A place in the circle, a flame that does not consume but guards. The Pyremaster touched a coal to her palm. Then walk the trial. She was led to a hall of molten rivers. There she had to cross a path of black glass, barefoot, bearing the covenant in one hand, a torch in the other. Brannock almost stopped her, but she only nodded and stepped forward. Every step was agony. The heat did not just burn, it tested. Each moment summoned doubt, her father's voice, the mirror, the ashes of Caerlith. But she walked on. At the end, the torch was still lit. The Pyremaster bowed. The fourth flame joins the ring. May it burn until end times. 4 realms, 4 wounds, 4 stones. 8 remained. Chapter 7. The Hollow Throne. Word reached them of unrest in the western lowlands. Eldemar's old ally, the kingdom of Rekindled, had fallen to infighting. The queen lay in a coma, her brother and daughter fought over the regency. The 5th stone could not be laid until the throne was whole. Arian and Brannock rode west, Callum remaining behind to guard the forming circle and speak with emissaries. When they arrived in Varenhold's capital, they found a court split by rumour and dagger. Princess Lyneth greeted them coldly. You bring unity and peace? Then bind my uncle's ambition first. The uncle, Duke Rekindled, met them in a silent hall lit by broken sun. Eldemar needs peace, so do we, but you ask us to kneel to forest spirits when we cannot keep our own streets clean. That night, assassins struck both camps. Brannock took a blade to the ribs but lived. Arian brought the 2 claimants into the queen's chamber, where the dying monarch still breathed shallowly. You fight over ashes, she said. The shadow will not care who wears the crown, but the circle might. Princess Lyneth took her mother's hand. Rekindled bowed his head. At sunrise, both placed a hand upon the covenant. The 5th stone hummed. Chapter 7. The Hollow Throne. Word reached them of unrest in the western lowlands. Eldemar's old ally, the kingdom of Varenhold, had fallen to infighting. The queen lay in a coma, her brother and daughter fought over the regency. The 5th stone could not be laid until the throne was whole. Arian and Brannock rode west, Callum remaining behind to guard the forming circle and speak with emissaries. When they arrived in Varenhold's capital, they found a court split by rumour and dagger. Princess Lyneth greeted them coldly. You bring unity and peace? Then bind my uncle's ambition first. The uncle, Duke Rekindled, met them in a silent hall lit by broken sun. Eldemar needs peace, so do we, but you ask us to kneel to forest spirits when we cannot keep our own streets clean. That night, assassins struck both camps. Brannock took a blade to the ribs but lived. Arian brought the 2 claimants into the queen's chamber, where the dying monarch still breathed shallowly. You fight over ashes, she said. The shadow will not care who wears the crown, but the circle might. Princess Lyneth took her mother's hand. Rekindled bowed his head. At sunrise, both placed a hand upon the covenant. The 5th stone hummed. Chapter 8. The Drowned Citadel. The 6th circle lay far to the south, beneath the waters of Lake Versailles. There, the people of the Drowned Citadel worshipped the tide and heard prophecy in the bellies of fish. Few from Eldemar had ever entered their marble reefs. Arian travelled by boat, accompanied by a scholar named Telean, whose family had once lived on the lake's edge. They arrived to find the citadel sunken, but not lifeless. Coral towers rose from the deep. Its ruler, the seer king Marion, greeted them in chambers lit with bioluminescent moss. You bring air words and fire scars, but the water hears more than it speaks. To prove her worth, Arian was submerged in the oracle pool, a ritual meant to reveal one's deepest current. There she saw herself, not as she was, but as a tyrant, cloaked in vines and ruin, her crown made of broken stones. She drowned, again and again, until a hand reached down, her own. She surfaced gasping, The Seer King waited. Your heart swells but does not burst. The water accepts your thread. The sixth circle pulsed into being. Chapter 9. The Storm Upon the Grass. As Ariane and her companions prepared to seek the seventh circle, war erupted. The kingdom of Uren, bitter over old treaties, marched on the plains of Eldemar. Led by a sorcerer general called Valios the Red, they wielded fire magic not seen since the Elder Wars. Rather than ride to the next ally, Ariane rode to battle. They met Uren's forces near the plains of Tarev, where the wind never ceased. The sky was bruised with smoke. Brannock, still weak, rode beside her. Callum returned to fight, bringing Wildkin and Thorn warriors from the Old Wild. In the battle's heart, Ariane confronted Valios atop a hill of corpses. He laughed at her talk of circles and covenants. You bind wind and root, I break nations. But when he struck her with flame, it parted. Her frost-veined hand caught the fire. Her wound pulsed and answered. Stone, ice, fire, wind, water, blood. 6 answered her call. Valios faltered. She cast him down not with magic, but a single word. Enough. The battle broke. The seventh stone formed where the blood soaked deepest. Chapter 10. The circle closes. Winter fell early. As snow touched the last ringstones, Ariane returned to Caer Lith. 8 circles laid, 4 remained, but the 9th came to her, a delegation from the sky fortress of Halmaris, borne by windriders and griffins. Their oath was quiet, simple. We remember when the sky and forest were one. We return. The 10th came from the desert tribes of Mirakai, who sent a vessel filled with golden sand and a scroll bearing the blood mark of every chieftain. They asked nothing, they remembered everything. The 11th came from within, Eldemar's own forgotten province of Thornreach, once cursed, now reborn by Callum and his kin. Their stone rose at dawn, forged from root and ash. At last, the 12th. The circle was whole. Ariane stood at the centre, parchment in one hand, blade in the other. She pressed the blade to her palm again. The wound reopened. The earth trembled. Lights blazed from each ring. Wind swirled. The ground cracked. A wall unseen rose once more. The shadow, already upon the borders, screamed. But the circle held. For now. The border was not eternal, but it would hold as long as those who walked within it remembered the cost, and Ariane, Queen of Wounds, would remember. Book 1. The Circle Rekindled. End.